First dirt hit my cheek before I understood that my husband meant to bury me alive. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 38, living outside Columbus, Ohio. And until that afternoon, I thought the worst my husband could do was cheat. I was wrong. Daniel knelt beside a shallow pit in my mother's backyard, still wearing his blue anniversary lunch shirt. Behind him stood my mother, Ruth, frozen on the porch. Beside her was my younger sister, Emily, one hand covering her mouth. Only my head and neck remained above the wet soil. A clear plastic tube rested between my lips so I could breathe. Daniel held a zippered bag full of dirt over the opening around my shoulders. "Tell me where the drive is," he said. His voice was calm. That frightened me more than shouting would have. I stared at the man I had slept beside for 12 years. What drive? He poured more dirt. The pressure tightened around my ribs. The silver one from my office. I knew then that this was not a sick joke, and it was not only about another woman. Daniel believed I had taken something from him. Worse, my mother and sister knew why. 3 hours earlier, I had arrived at Mom's little yellow house for what Emily called a family intervention. Daniel said I had become paranoid. He told them I was checking his phone, questioning his late nights, and accusing him of hiding money. Every word was technically true. He left out the reason. For 6 months, our checking account had been losing small amounts. First $400, then $700, then $2,000. Daniel blamed automatic payments and bookkeeping mistakes. He was the chief financial officer of Bellwether Community Homes, a nonprofit that renovated houses for low-income families. He understood money better than I did, so for too long I accepted his explanations. Then I found a hotel receipt in his jacket. The room had been booked in Cincinnati on a night he claimed to be in Cleveland. 2 breakfasts were charged the next morning. I did not confront him immediately. I watched. That was my first act of revenge, although I did not know it yet. I stopped being the trusting wife he expected and became the investigator he never saw coming. I photographed receipts. I copied account statements. I wrote down license plates outside his office. One belonged to Vanessa Cole, Bellwether's development director. She was elegant, sharp, and always touched Daniel's arm when she laughed. I assumed Vanessa was his lover. The truth was uglier. On Friday night, Daniel came home after midnight and showered before getting into bed. While he was in the bathroom, his phone lit up on the dresser. Vanessa's message said, "Ruth signed. Claire is the only loose end. Handle her tomorrow." Ruth was my mother. I took a picture of the screen. When Daniel returned, I pretended to be asleep. I lay beside him until dawn, listening to his breathing and wondering what my mother had signed. The next morning, Emily called. She sounded nervous. She asked me to come alone to Mom's house. When I arrived, Daniel's SUV was already behind the garage. I should have driven away. Instead, I went inside because families teach us that love means entering rooms, even when every instinct says run. Mom sat at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of her. Emily stood by the sink. Daniel locked the back door behind me. He said the papers were for a home equity loan. Mom needed money for roof repairs, and he was helping her. I picked up the first page. The lender was Harbor Crown Holdings, a company I had never heard of. The loan amount was $480,000. Mom's house was worth barely $200,000. I turned the page and saw my own name beneath a signature I had not written. "This is fraud," I said. Daniel's pleasant expression disappeared. Emily began crying. Mom would not look at me. Daniel reached for the papers. I stepped back. He grabbed my wrist. I screamed, but Mom closed the curtains instead of opening the door. That betrayal hurt more than his fingers crushing my skin. He dragged me outside. The pit was behind the garage, where Mom had planned to plant a maple tree. Daniel said he only wanted to scare me until I admitted what I had taken. Emily begged him to stop. Mom kept saying, "Just tell him, Claire. Please tell him. And this will be over." They wrapped a garden tarp around my body so the dirt would not scratch me. That detail stayed with me. People can do monstrous things while pretending their small kindnesses make them decent. Daniel lowered me into the pit. He packed soil around my legs, then my waist, then my chest. He gave me the breathing tube and said I would be out in 5 minutes if I cooperated. I did not know where his silver drive was. But as the dirt pressed against me, I remembered something. The previous evening, Daniel had emptied his pockets onto our dresser. Keys, wallet, loose change, and a silver flash drive no bigger than my thumb. When he went to shower, our orange cat, Miles, jumped onto the dresser and knocked several things onto the floor. Daniel found his keys and wallet. I had seen the drive slide beneath an old cedar chest. I had not touched it. He had lost it in our own bedroom. If I told him, he might find it and erase whatever frightened him enough to do this. If I stayed silent, he might kill me. Then I felt a vibration against my left hip. My phone. Daniel had searched my purse, but he had not checked the hidden pocket inside my gardening overalls. I had worn them because Mom claimed she needed help clearing the yard. The phone was trapped beneath the tarp, but before Daniel grabbed me, I had started an audio recording. I did it from instinct. The same instinct that had made me photograph his message. It was still recording. Every threat, every name, every plea from my mother and sister. Daniel leaned closer. Last chance? I looked him in the eyes and made a decision. The drive is somewhere you'll never find it. I lied. His face changed. I saw fear beneath his anger. He poured the rest of the bag around my neck. "Then maybe," he said. "You can stay there until you remember." He stood and told Mom and Emily to go inside. Rain began tapping on the leaves. The soil around my chest grew heavier. Daniel checked his watch and followed them toward the house. As the back door closed, I heard Emily scream at him. Then the breathing tube slipped from my mouth. Mo at moi famille saldi. Panic is not loud when you cannot move. It is a silent explosion inside your body. I turned my face toward the tube. It lay less than an inch away, but an inch might as well have been a mile. My shoulders were locked beneath the earth. Rainwater trickled into the pit and pooled against my chin. I tried to shout. Dirt entered my mouth. For several seconds, I fought wildly. The pressure became worse. My vision narrowed. Then I heard my father's voice in my memory. "When a machine traps you, don't fight the whole machine. Find the smallest moving part." Dad had repaired farm equipment. He died when I was 24, but that sentence returned when I needed it most. I stopped struggling. I moved one finger, then another. My left hand was near the surface because Daniel had packed that side poorly. I bent my wrist, loosened the wet dirt, and created a pocket around my forearm. It took everything I had, but I raised my hand through the soil. My fingers found the tube. I pushed it back between my lips and breathed. I could not call 911 without pulling out the phone. I could barely move my arm, so I used the only device that might hear me. "Hey, Siri," I whispered through the tube. "Call 911. Nothing happened. The tarp and dirt muffled me. I tried again until my throat burned. From inside the house came a crash, then silence. I wondered whether Daniel was hurting Emily. I wondered whether Mom would let him. 5 minutes passed. Maybe 10. Rain filled my ears. Then the back door opened. Footsteps crossed the grass. I expected Daniel. Instead, Emily dropped beside the pit with a kitchen knife in her hand. "Don't speak," she whispered. "He thinks I went upstairs." She cut the tarp near my arm and pulled out my phone. The recording timer showed 40 7 minutes, I said. Emily shook her head. He took Mom in his car. He said if I call anyone, he'll send something to the bank and she'll go to prison. Call them. Anyway, Claire, she knew. Those 3 words struck harder than the dirt. Emily dug with both hands while she spoke. 2 years earlier, Mom had borrowed money after falling behind on taxes. Daniel offered help. He created false repair invoices using bellwether contractors, then moved money through Mom's account. Mom told herself it was temporary. When she realized the transfers were stolen donations, Daniel already had documents bearing her signature. He used her fear to make her cooperate again and again. Emily learned the truth only that morning. Daniel said I had stolen evidence that could send all 3 of them to prison. He promised that if they helped frighten me, he would destroy Mom's paperwork. Did you know about the pit? I asked. Emily's hand stopped. Her silence answered me. She had not known he would bury me so deep. She had still known enough. I wanted to hate her. Part of me did, but hate could wait. Survival could not. Take the recording, I said. Email it to yourself and to my work account. Then call 911. Before she could move, Daniel's SUV returned. Emily looked toward the driveway. That's too fast. She pressed send on the email, shoved the phone into her waistband, and tried to cover the disturbed soil around my arm. Daniel came through the side gate alone. He saw Emily kneeling beside me. For one terrible second, nobody moved. Then Emily ran. Daniel caught her before she reached the porch. She fought him, and my phone fell into the grass. He picked it up. When he saw the recording screen, his face went pale. He ended the recording and checked the messages. Emily had emailed the file, but the rain had weakened the signal. The message showed a spinning circle beside the attachment. Not sent. Daniel threw the phone onto the concrete and crushed it beneath his shoe. You always make everything harder, he told me. He ordered Emily inside. She refused until he whispered something I could not hear. Whatever it was made her stop fighting. She walked into the house, trembling. Daniel knelt beside the pit again. Your mother has been dropped somewhere safe, he said. Emily and I are going for a drive. You have until we return to remember where the drive is. If I die, you'll never find it. He smiled without warmth. If you die, I'll tell the police you had a breakdown. Your mother and sister will confirm it. We'll say you buried yourself as some kind of protest and that we found you too late. It sounded ridiculous. Yet families have helped hide stranger crimes. And Daniel knew how to make a lie look respectable. He took my broken phone and forced Emily into the SUV. As they pulled away, I caught a glimpse of her looking back through the rear window. Then I was alone. I worked at the soil around my arm. Rain softened it, but every movement stole breath. I freed my left shoulder, then reached toward a metal bucket Daniel had left nearby. It was too far away. The back fence rattled. Our mother's neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, looked over it. He was 71 and walked with a cane. He had heard shouting, but assumed it was a family argument. Then he saw my hand sticking out of the ground. He did not ask questions. He called 911 and climbed over the fence. Paramedics and firefighters arrived 7 minutes later. They dug carefully, so the pressure would not release too quickly, and send blood rushing dangerously back into my legs. A police officer kept asking who had done this. I gave him Daniel's name, Emily's name, Mom's name, the SUV's plate, and every detail I could remember. When they lifted me free, the sky above Ohio looked impossibly large. At the hospital, doctors treated me for compression injuries, dehydration, and shock. Detective Lena Ortiz sat beside my bed and listened without interrupting. When I finished, she told me Daniel's SUV had been found at a bus terminal. Emily was in the passenger seat, unconscious but alive. Daniel was gone. Mom was also missing. The police searched our house that night. The silver drive was not beneath the cedar chest. Daniel had gone home before returning to the backyard. He had found it. 3 days later, he walked into a police station with a lawyer. He claimed the burial was a therapeutic exercise I had requested during a mental health crisis. Mom signed a statement supporting him. Emily said she could not remember what happened after the argument. My recording was gone with the broken phone. The cloud backup contained only the first 12 minutes. Before Daniel made his clearest threats. Daniel was charged with unlawful restraint and reckless endangerment, but his attorney secured bail. He returned to our house while I was staying in a protected apartment. On television, he stood beside Vanessa Cole and called the incident a tragic family misunderstanding. Vanessa placed a comforting hand on his arm. That was when I noticed her wedding ring. It matched mine exactly. Part THRE. Teach mo my guide to me. Ring and I froze the news video and enlarged the image. My ring was a custom design, a narrow gold band with 3 tiny blue stones, one for the month Daniel and I met, one for our wedding month, and one for the month we bought our first home. Daniel had designed it himself. Or so he had told me. Vanessa wore the same ring on her left hand. I sent the image to Detective Ortiz. She warned me not to contact Vanessa and not to investigate alone. I promised I would not. Then I lied. Because Daniel had taught me what promises were worth when survival was involved. I searched county marriage records. There was no record of Vanessa marrying Daniel. I searched property databases and found a condominium in Cincinnati owned by a trust called Bluestone 3. I remembered the stones in our rings. The trust's mailing address belonged to Harbor Crown Holdings, the company on Mom's fraudulent loan. I created a timeline. Whenever Daniel claimed to be traveling for Bellwether, I compared the dates with Vanessa's public charity events. They were often in the same cities. Hotel receipts matched. Restaurant charges matched. But an affair did not explain stolen donations or why Vanessa wore a duplicate wedding ring. I needed someone inside Bellwether. I contacted Marcus Reed, the nonprofit's former accountant. Daniel had fired him 8 months earlier for what the board called performance issues. Marcus agreed to meet at a crowded coffee shop. He arrived carrying no bag and sat facing the entrance. That told me he was afraid. Daniel wasn't stealing hundreds, he said. He was stealing millions. Bellwether received federal grants and private donations to renovate abandoned houses. Daniel created fake contractors, approved inflated invoices, and transferred the extra money through Harbor Crown. Vanessa brought in wealthy donors and controlled the grant reports. Together, they made unfinished homes look complete by recycling photographs and forging inspections. Marcus found discrepancies and copied records onto a silver drive. Before he could report them, Daniel discovered what he had done. Marcus hid the drive inside a desk in Daniel's office, hoping Daniel would assume someone else had taken it. But Daniel brought it home, I said. Marcus stared at me. Then what he found under your chest may not be my drive. He explained that Bellwether bought dozens of identical silver drives. The real one had a scratch shaped like the letter V near its cap. Daniel had nearly killed me over the wrong drive. Where is the real one? I asked. Marcus looked toward the window. I went back for it after they fired me. It was gone. Someone else had taken it. I thought of Emily. My sister worked part-time cleaning Bellwether's offices. She had recommended the job to Marcus's replacement. She also knew Daniel was terrified I possessed a drive. Maybe Daniel had told her that. Or maybe she had started the fear herself. I went to Detective Ortiz with Marcus. She took his statement and contacted federal investigators. But without the drive or original records, the case would take months. Daniel had already begun deleting files and blaming Marcus. That evening, Emily called me from a prepaid number. "Meet me at Dad's storage unit," she said. "Come alone." Dad's old unit stood outside Grove City, filled with tools Mom could never bring herself to sell. I knew it could be a trap. I sent the location to Ortiz and asked her to wait nearby. Emily was inside when I arrived. A bruise covered the side of her neck, where Daniel had grabbed her. She looked thinner than she had 1 week earlier. "Mom isn't missing," she said. "She's staying at Vanessa's condo." I asked why. "Because Vanessa is her daughter." For a moment, the words made no sense. Then Emily told me the secret our mother had kept for 42 years, before Mom met Dad. She gave birth to a baby girl and surrendered her for adoption. Vanessa found Mom through a DNA service 3 years earlier. At first, their reunion was joyful. Vanessa wanted a family. Mom wanted forgiveness. Then Vanessa met Daniel. He told Mom he could help Vanessa rise at Bellwether. He told Vanessa he could protect Mom from her tax debt. By the time their affair began, all three were tied together by secrets and money. "Vanessa is our half-sister," I whispered. Emily nodded. The duplicate ring was not a wedding ring. It was a symbol Daniel had created for both women, convincing each of us that the 3 blue stones represented something private. To me, they marked our life together. To Vanessa, they represented the 3 women in her newly found family. Daniel had built 2 different lies around the same piece of gold. Emily opened Dad's old red toolbox and removed a silver drive. A V-shaped scratch marked its cap. She had found it while cleaning Daniel's office. She looked at several files and realized they involved Mom. Afraid, she hid it in the storage unit. Then she sent Daniel an anonymous message, saying Claire had the evidence. "You made him think I stole it," I said. Tears filled her eyes. "I thought he'd confess to you. I thought you'd finally leave him. I never imagined the pit." Her plan had nearly killed me. "Why didn't you give it to the police after?" "Because Mom's signature is everywhere. Vanessa says if the drive comes out, Mom goes to prison too." I held out my hand. "Give it to me." Emily pulled it back. "Promise you'll protect her." She watched him bury me. He told her it would only be a few inches. He told her. She closed the curtains. The sentence ended our argument. Emily looked down. I understood fear. I understood manipulation. But fear did not erase choice. Mom had made hers. Emily had made hers. Now I would make mine. I took the drive. Before I could signal Ortiz, the storage unit door slammed shut. Daniel's voice came from the other side. "Thank you, Claire," he called. "You finally found it for me." "Parfa you are. The tir amsidi. Tirap." The metal door shook as Daniel lowered the latch from outside. Emily began pounding on it. I pulled out my phone, but there was no signal inside the steel building. Daniel spoke through the narrow gap near the floor. He had followed Emily for 2 days. He knew she had taken the drive, but not where she hid it. He let her contact me, because he knew I could make her surrender it. "Slide it under the door," he said, "and I'll let you out." "You said that in the backyard too." He laughed softly. "And you're still alive." Emily pointed toward the rear wall. Dad's unit shared a thin metal divider with the next one. We began moving boxes as quietly as possible while I kept Daniel talking. I asked why he chose Vanessa. He said Vanessa understood ambition. I asked why he married me. He said I had made him look trustworthy. A school librarian with a quiet smile, a widowed mother nearby. A stable suburban house. We were decorations in the life he sold to donors. Every answer cut me, but every answer also delayed him. Emily found Dad's old hydraulic jack. We wedged it against the divider and pumped the handle. Metal groaned. Daniel heard it. "Stop," he warned. The wall bent enough to create a narrow opening. Emily squeezed through first. I handed her the drive and started after her. The front door flew upward. Daniel rushed inside. He grabbed my ankle and pulled me back. My palms scraped across concrete. Emily disappeared into the neighboring unit with the drive. Daniel released me and ran toward the opening. I caught the handle of the hydraulic jack and swung it into his knee. He fell with a cry. I crawled through the gap and found Emily outside, shouting for help. Detective Ordaz's unmarked car entered the lane with its lights flashing. Daniel limped out a rear service door before she reached us. He escaped over a fence and vanished into an industrial lot. But he did not get the drive. Federal agents examined it that night. Marcus had copied everything. Bank transfers, false invoices, internal emails, recordings of Daniel and Vanessa discussing how to pressure Mom. The evidence proved a conspiracy involving more than $6 million. It should have ended there. Instead, the files contained one final surprise. Harbor Crown had a secret beneficiary listed only by initials, CB my initials. Daniel had placed more than $800,000 in accounts connected to my Social Security number. If the scheme collapsed, he planned to make me look like its leader. The trusting librarian was not only decoration. I was his escape route. That explained why he had not simply killed me in Mom's yard. He needed me alive long enough to sign statements and move money. The burial was meant to break me. It had done the opposite. Agents arrested Vanessa at the Cincinnati condo. Mom was with her. Vanessa blamed Daniel and claimed she had been manipulated. Mom finally withdrew her false statement. She admitted what happened in the backyard and offered to cooperate. Daniel remained missing. His face appeared on the news. His accounts were frozen. Airports received alerts. Police watched our house, Mom's home, and Bellwether's offices. For 2 days, there was no sign of him. On the third night, I received an email from my dead father's account. The subject line said, "BL Easto Ibis, Eaterake." The message contained a photograph of my mother sitting in a wooden chair. A newspaper lay across her lap to show the date. Behind her was a bare concrete wall. Daniel had taken her before the police moved her to protective housing. He wanted the original drive and a signed confession from me. He gave me an address near Lake Erie and warned me not to involve the police. Detective Ortiz wanted to control the exchange. Federal agents made a copy of the drive and fitted me with a transmitter. They insisted the danger was too high. I insisted I was the only person Daniel believed he could still control. I also knew something the police did not. The address was an abandoned Bellwether, renovation outside Sandusky. I had visited it during a donor tour the previous summer. The house had 2 entrances and an old storm cellar beneath the kitchen. Daniel did not know I remembered. Before driving north, I went to see Vanessa in the county jail. She looked smaller without her tailored suit and perfect hair. I asked one question. "Where would he run?" She stared at me. "Why would I help you?" "Because he put the money in my name, not yours. When this ends, he plans to blame both of us. I can prove what he did to me. Can you?" That frightened her. Vanessa told me about a private airfield near the Canadian border. Daniel had paid a pilot in cash months earlier. A plane would be ready at dawn. Then she grabbed my wrist through the slot beneath the glass. "He never loved either of us," she said. I pulled free. "That is the first honest thing we share." At midnight, I arrived at the abandoned house carrying the copied drive. Ortiz and her team waited beyond the tree line. Emily monitored my transmitter from a command vehicle. Inside, Mom was tied to a chair. Daniel stood behind her with a gun. His injured knee was wrapped. His face looked exhausted, but his blue shirt was clean. Even as a fugitive, he wanted to appear respectable. I placed the drive on the floor. Let her go. Sign first. He slid papers toward me. They said I had created Harbor Crown, stolen Bellwether's money, and manipulated Daniel, Vanessa, and my mother. It was an absurd story supported by carefully planted records. I picked up the pen. Mom began to cry. Claire. For the first time since the backyard, I looked directly at her. Why did you close the curtains? I asked. Daniel told me to sign. Mom whispered. Because I was ashamed. That isn't an answer. I thought if I didn't see it, I could tell myself it wasn't happening. Her words were not enough to restore what she had broken. But they were true, and truth was the only bridge left between us. I signed the papers with the false name Vanessa Cole. Daniel glanced down and realized what I had done. That was the signal. The kitchen window shattered as police fired a distraction round. I dropped to the floor. Mom threw herself sideways with the chair. Daniel fired once into the ceiling and ran toward the rear hallway. Exactly where I wanted him to go. The storm cellar door stood open beneath a loose rug. Earlier, while pretending to inspect the papers, I had pulled the release cord with my foot. Daniel stepped backward into darkness. He fell down the stairs, and the gun slid across the concrete below. I reached the opening before the officers entered. Daniel lay at the bottom, conscious but unable to stand. Rainwater had flooded the cellar floor and turned the dirt walls to mud. He looked up at me. For 1 second, we were back in Mom's yard. Except now he was the one beneath the ground. Claire, he said, suddenly gentle. Help me? I could have closed the door. I could have walked away and let the mud rise around him. Instead, I stood where he could see me and waited for Detective Ortiz. No, I said. You're going to live long enough to hear every verdict. Lef, he co-eld nant, bury, Daniel survived with a broken leg and 3 fractured ribs. He faced federal charges for wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, kidnapping, evidence tampering, and attempted murder. The audio from my damaged phone was eventually recovered by a forensic technician. The final 28 minutes had remained in temporary memory, even though the screen was crushed. The jury heard Daniel demand the drive, Mom begging me to answer, and dirt falling around my head. Then they heard him say he would leave me there until I remembered. No expensive suit could make that sound respectable. His lawyers portrayed me as unstable and showed the jury the accounts in my name. Federal experts proved Daniel created them. Marcus explained the records. Emily admitted sending the anonymous message, and Mom admitted lying to police. Vanessa accepted a plea agreement and testified against Daniel. She described the fake contractors, the hotel meetings, and the plan to blame me. She also admitted she knew Daniel was married from the day they met. When my turn came, I walked to the witness stand wearing the blue, stone rinnet. Daniel stared at it. The prosecutor asked why I had kept it. Because a lie can still become evidence, I said. I told the jury about the missing money, the hotel receipt, Vanessa's message, and the family intervention. I explained the pressure of the soil and the plastic tube against my teeth. I described seeing my mother close the curtains. I did not exaggerate. I did not cry on command. I gave Daniel something he had never given anyone, the plain truth. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Guilty on every major count. The judge sentenced him to 48 years in federal prison. As deputies led him away, he turned toward me. I expected hatred. What I saw was confusion. Daniel still could not understand how the woman he had chosen, because she seemed quiet, had become the person who destroyed his entire design. He had mistaken kindness for weakness. Many people do. Vanessa received 11 years after returning part of the stolen money. Mom pleaded guilty to fraud and obstruction. Because of her cooperation and Daniel's coercion, she received 18 months in a minimum security facility followed by supervised release. Emily was not charged in the financial case, but she pleaded guilty to helping unlawfully restrain me. The court gave her probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. Justice did not arrive as one clean victory. It arrived through court dates, apologies, and consequences. It did not restore the months I lost to nightmares. It put responsibility where it belonged. Bellwether community homes nearly collapsed. Hundreds of donors felt betrayed, and dozens of families were left with unfinished houses. The federal court recovered several $1 million from Daniel's accounts and properties. I asked that my share of any marital assets go into completing those homes. Daniel had used my name to steal from families who needed safe places to live. I wanted my name attached to the repairs. Revenge is sweetest when it leaves something better standing in the ruins. I divorced him before the criminal trial ended. I returned the duplicate blue stone ring to the jeweler and had the stones removed. One stone went into a small pendant for Emily after she completed a year of counseling. I kept one in a box. The third was sold, and the money paid Mr. Alvarez's medical bills after his hip surgery. He had climbed a fence to save me when my own family stayed behind a curtain. A blue stone was a small thank you, but he wore the gratitude like a medal. My relationship with Emily rebuilt slowly. Trust did not return because she apologized. It returned because she stopped demanding forgiveness and started accepting my boundaries. She testified even when it embarrassed her. She volunteered with survivors of domestic abuse. She learned that guilt is only useful when it changes what you do next. Mom wrote to me every week from prison. For 3 months, I did not answer. Then one letter arrived with no excuses. She wrote, "I spent my whole life believing that protecting the family meant hiding what could destroy us. Now I understand that the hiding was what destroyed us." I read that sentence many times. When she was released, I met her at a diner. We sat across from each other with coffee between us. She looked older. I probably did too. She apologized again. I told her I did not know whether our relationship would ever feel like it once had. "I know," she said. "I'll take whatever truth you can give me." That was the beginning. Not forgiveness, exactly, but something honest enough to grow. The little yellow house was sold to pay restitution. Before the sale closed, I visited the backyard one last time. The pit had been filled, but the grass grew unevenly over it. For months, I had avoided that place. In my dreams, I was still beneath the soil, turning my face toward a tube I could not reach. I brought a young maple tree. Emily helped me dig. Mom watched from the porch, but this time the curtains were open. We planted the tree where Daniel had tried to bury me. Beneath its roots, I placed a copy of his conviction. Not because I believed paper could punish him further, but because I wanted the ground to remember a different ending. The following spring, the first green leaves appeared. By then, I had moved to a small house near the library where I worked. I installed bright windows and never closed the curtains during the day. I adopted another orange cat after Miles died peacefully at 16. I named the new one Maple. I also began speaking about financial abuse and coercive control. At my first event, a woman told me her husband controlled every dollar and placed debts in her name. She had believed it was not abuse because he had never hit her. She left him 3 weeks later. That mattered more to me than every headline about Daniel. People often asked whether I felt satisfied when he was sentenced. I told them satisfaction was too simple a word. I felt relief, grief, anger, and an emptiness where 12 years of marriage had been. Revenge did not heal me. Truth gave me the space to heal myself. Still, one moment brought me close to satisfaction. 2 years after the trial, Daniel sent a letter from prison. He said he had changed. He blamed ambition, Vanessa, pressure, and fear. He asked me to visit so we could find closure. At the bottom, he wrote, "Part of you must still love the man I was." I carried the letter to the maple tree. It had grown taller than me, its branches strong enough to cast a small shadow across the yard. I read Daniel's words once more, then tore the page into narrow strips and placed them in a metal bowl. I did not burn it. Fire would have felt dramatic, and Daniel had already taken enough drama from my life. I soaked the pieces in water until the ink dissolved. Then I mixed the pulp with compost and spread it beneath the tree. The man he had been was a story he invented. I did not love him. I had loved the person he pretended to be. That difference set me free. I sometimes remember believing my life had narrowed to 1 inch, the distance between my mouth and the air. But I moved one finger, then another. I made a pocket in the dirt. I found the smallest moving part. That is how I survived Daniel and my family's betrayal. It is how I rebuilt my life, one honest choice at a time. He tried to turn the earth into my grave. Instead, I made it the ground where my new life began. The end.